cladding is starting to come off buildings across England because it's not to code. In Islington, the external panels of this council-owned property are coming down already because they were deemed insufficiently fireproof by an official government test. And they're hardly alone.
I can inform the House that as of midday today, the cladding from 75 high-rise buildings in 26 local authority areas has failed the combustibility test.
The government's official building regulations are set out in something called Approved Document B. And what that says is that insulation products attached to the outside of buildings of more than 18 metres tall must meet stringent fire standards. Specifically, they must be of materials that are either non-combustible or of very limited combustibility. In the jargon, they must be of grade A2 or better. That is what these tests are all about. How then can it be that buildings have been fitted with cladding that doesn't meet that requirement? Building inspectors don't always rely directly on the rules set by the government. The inspectors, who these days are largely privately employed, use guidelines to the rules written by professional bodies representing the sector.
It's been some time since the relevant regulations were updated, and the industry has to keep up with changing technology, changing customer demands. It has to turn to its specialists, to consultants for advice on these issues, because it can't depend on the regulations alone.
These sector guidelines actually allow builders to get insulation or cladding that doesn't meet the A2 standard past inspectors, for example, via a so-called fire test. So you rig up your proposed cladding as it would be used and then see what happens when it's exposed to fire. If the system as a whole performs well, then it's signed off, even if individual parts would fail on their own. So some of the cladding failing tests right now may have been rigorously tested as part of a system. There are, though, rather less rigorous routes.
If no actual fire test data exists for a particular system, the client may instead submit a desktop study report from a suitable body stating whether, in their opinion, combustibility criteria would be met.
That's guidance from the Building Control Alliance, the BCA, a body representing the great and good of building. Builders can use data from old tests to get combustible materials signed off in new scenarios without doing any further fire tests. This opaque process is a vulnerability in the compliance process. Newsnight, though, has found another weakness in the regulation. This is a piece of guidance from the NHBC, a sector body and a major supplier of building inspectors. And what it says is that rather than everything needing to be A2, you can use B-grade cladding and B-grade insulation material without even needing a desktop study. That is because, they say, there have been so many desktop studies and so many fire tests. In essence, they've decided that the government's rules are too strict. NHBC said that this guidance was issued
on the basis of NHBC having reviewed a significant quantity of data from a range of tests and desktop assessments.
They also stressed that thorough assessments by their inspectors haven't allowed the use of plastic cord cladding, such as that used at Grenfell, under this guidance. Earlier tonight, though, we learned that one of the insulation products they propose using with B-grade cladding is actually C-grade insulation. This guidance takes us a long way from A2.
There's a world of interest.
So does it much matter legally that builders follow sector guidelines, not government rules? Well, yes, but in the event of a civil case, the sector guidelines would matter.
Yes, it does, because breach of the regulations will be very strong evidence in a civil claim against a builder. However, in the absence of up-to-date regulations, in the absence of clarity, then general guidance, compliance with general guidance, could also be a defence.
So the building codes are a mess, and the government is slow to update its regulations. But had contractors just stuck with them, they would now be pulling less cladding off high-rises.